Okay, this is a continuation of our study of the book of John. And once again, just to review, the core theme of the whole book is Jesus and God wanting to abide within us here on earth. Uh, to give us a little bit of goodness and purity that we'll never have on our own. Um, filling you with the Holy Spirit to help you be good and pure, making it easy. Okay, now, I want to talk about the role of the devil, and the devil is his goal is to block that from happening, right? And here I have set up here is a self. We're all made as free-willed, independent beings, right? With the power of choice. So we have the choice to want to come back to God or do what we want, right? All right, so here's God. God is ultimate truth and eternal life, and God is ultimately salvation, right? Because He's ultimate life, God is salvation. Uh, all right, okay, now, so this is the goal to get back to God, all right? And the devil, he's the father of all lies, and he's a murderer. He's a separator too, all right, Satan. And his two greatest resources are the self and the world, right? So what the devil wants to do is get you to focus on yourself in whatever way, whether positive or negative, right? So whether it's sense of esteem or low esteem or whatever, people praising you or people harassing you, mocking you, ridiculing you. The whole idea is to get you to turn back and look at yourself, focus on yourself instead of keeping your eyes lifted on God, like Jesus lifted on the cross. All right. And also, the devil uses the world. Remember in the temptations of Jesus Christ, the devil said, "Hey, look at all these kingdoms of the world. I own this stuff. This is my stuff, right? I'll give it all to you if you just bow down and worship me, right?" All the things of the world, whatever that is, and it can be different for different people. Although there's a lot of similarity, as far as wanting, material wealth and money and so forth and power, fame and whatnot. All right, it's all stuff of the ego and self. So love of the world, right, is another resource, but really these two go hand in hand because it's the self that loves the stuff of the world, right? Our carnal, fleshly nature, not looking for the spiritual. The natural man, the fleshly, human, natural man wants this stuff, all right? Uh, the spiritual man seeks God, right? Now, I'm not saying I'm a spiritual man. Uh, you know, um, I got a long way to go. Okay. So we talked about, self and pride here. How especially in the Old Testament, it's bad, right? Now today we're going to talk. Oh, we started talking about the world last time. That's right. This is the second lesson on the world. We started off with a definition of what is the world. We said, there's literal definitions here. Physical world, that which pertains to space but not time. Right. This is from Zohar, his definition. Right. What it means is, in the physical world, in the cosmos, right, man can travel through space, but not through time, right? We're stuck with whatever chronological time gives us. So, it's tick, 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 and we can't change that, right? But not so in the spiritual world where you're not constrained by time. That's the aeon, which is eternity, which means not just, forever, but it means timeless. Okay. Uh, and that's the idea that time is not what we think it is. Einstein taught us that. He taught us that time is relative to velocity, through space. He said time is, can be warped, right? And then there are conceptual wormholes where you can travel through time. So now that's one definition of the world. There's also humanity, the sum total of all living, beings in the world, like humans in the world, right? The earth in contrast to heaven. This is from Vines, right? The human race. Okay, so that's similar. The present condition of human affairs in alienation from and opposition to God. So now this is getting into what is really about the world he's talking about here. The world. This is what Jesus Christ talked about. Jesus Christ wasn't talking about the world as like, oh, okay, yeah, this planet, right? Or he wasn't, not so much talking about the human race. He was talking about uh, the worldliness, right? The interests of men, the benefits of men, the desires of men, the plots and schemes of men, all right? The sum of temporal and material possessions and all of the stuff of men. How we put so much emphasis on material stuff, right? Grubby material things, which is in antithesis and opposition to what God holds as important, which is the eternal, which is only the spiritual aspect of us, right? The physical is fleeting and is corruptible, is fading away, right? Um, okay, so this is from Bible Study Tools Online, which I found to be a very good website as far as Bible study. It's the inhabitants of earth, men, okay, humans, the ungodly multitude, the whole mass of men alienated from God, hostile to the cause of Jesus Christ. All right, world affairs, aggregate of things earthly, the interests of men, right? The whole circle of earthly goods, endowments, riches, advantages, fleshly pleasures, which, although hollow and frail and fleeting, stir desire, seduce from God, and are obstacles to the cause of Christ. Okay, so that's what we're talking about the world, right? And, two words for earth, G, and sarx. Sarx is actually more formally meaning the flesh, right? But it talks about the same thing. In antithesis to heaven, right? Infirmity of human nature, corrupt desires, and filthy appetites. And all right, so we talked about how the core elements of this, of the world is ego, pride, vanity, fame, popularity. I say popularity because, I think kids identify with this term more because, like in high school, everyone's trying to be popular, everyone's trying to be part of the age group. Not everyone. I mean, I shunned that stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, look at these people. Uh, Power, position, status, material wealth, money, all right, and they're all mutually reinforcing, all mutually whatever related, right, and all of them are driven at the core by the self, all right. And we said the devil rules the world, all right. We said that two biggest resources the devil uses are the self and the world, right? So the idea is, the idea is that the fleshly, self-serving self, right, sacrifices itself, lays down its life for a friend, and does so to get back to God. Deny yourself, pick up your cross daily, right? To get, not so much just to come back to God for the sake of God, right? Not to get ultimate, eternal life, whatever, right? Um, but truly and honestly to come back to God. All right. So another thing that the devil uses is the self, and often is used as social mirrors. You know, a big thing is social mirrors now, like social media today, right? People trying to become like all popular and all like like a what do you call it? Media star, a social media sensation, right? Like Kardashians or some goofy stuff. Uh, or social mirrors, like in my case, I mean, I got all these negative social mirrors put up all around me. People who antagonize and mock and provoke, right? You know, uh, who stir my flesh because I get mad because these people are mocking my intelligence when I know that these guys are, to put it nicely, very very short on intelligence. Um, uh, Okay. All right. Another thing is the world, all the stuff of the world we set up there, right? This, steer your way to this. This only focuses back to yourself, right? Uh, And so all these are verses where the devil is the ruler of the world. I mean, why do you want to be so focused on the world when the devil, it's the devil's domain, right? You know how Hades and Pluto are both the gods of death in the underworld, hell, right? And also the gods of wealth. Well, the Christian in Christianity, in Judaism, the devil. That's exactly what the devil is, the god of death and wealth, right? Ruler of this world, controls all the kingdoms of this world, all right? For the ruler of this world is coming, and he has nothing in me. The ruler of this world has been judged. All right. Okay. All right. So this is John. Matthew says the same thing. He controls all the kingdoms of the world. Says, hey, all these things I'll give you if you fall down and worship me. Ephesians. The course of this world, the prince of power of the air, the whole world lies in the power of the evil one, right? God of this world is blinded in my. He's talking about the devil here, Satan. All right, so the world hates Jesus and true believers, right? The world's going to hate you if you're a true believer, right? In opposition to the worldly interests. And that's where most people are at, right? They're all about self and pleasing the self, and they're going to hate you if you seek what is spiritually right, if you speak what is morally right, and that goes against what they want to believe, right? They're going to hate you, even though they know nothing, have no basis for having a belief. They're going to believe what they want to believe, and they're going to hate you, right? Okay, that's repeated a number of times. The world is in darkness. Now, by darkness, it means two things. One is darkness in terms of moral darkness, doing evil deeds, right? Corrupt, lying, cheating, murderous crap, right? Manipulative, swindling, or being spiritually blind. Now, this is the one, they're both important, right? But I mean, ultimately, spiritual is the most important, right? Spiritual blindness is having, it's like Nicodemus, you could say, was spiritually blind, right? He's like, I know you do signs, right? It was all wrapped up in physical signs in this world, physical manifestation in this world. That's what they're seeking. No, Jesus Christ says, you got to seek the Spirit, right? You're not going to see this. You're going to feel it, right? You just know, right, that you've changed, right? That there's something there that, is not part of you, is not natural to you, and it's making you, giving you a goodness and a purity which you don't have on your own. All right. So, those verses talk about that darkness, right? And we said the world will try to make you stumble, right? The word stumble is scandalizo. It's scandal. We think of the word scandal, right? Right? It's related, right, to make you stumble, fall, right? But what they're talking about is to fall in terms of spiritual goodness, right? In terms of your path back to God, fall that way. And that results in being lost. Now, the word lost is apolumi, right? Jesus often used that, so that none of those that are given me will be lost, right? But it also means destruction. So lost and destruction are synonymous in the word apolumi, and it refers to spiritual destruction, right? Not physical, like you're gonna be killed and die. This is about eternal death, eternal damnation, right? Which is a bit more important because it lasts, in eternity. Once you're established in wherever you're, that's it for your eternity. Okay, so these are verses that support that. Now this is today's topic. It's very brief. We're going to talk about, do not love the world because one, the devil rules the world, and two, if you love the world, you cannot love God, right? Two, another thing is putting men before God. So this is part of it. The world is about vanity, reputation, and a big part of that is wrapped up in social identity, right? The whole mirrored self-image, or looking glass self-image, right? Uh, I always kind of think of a line, the first chapter in Herman Melville's Moby Dick, right? And you could tell that he understood things, right? Although, if you read Moby Dick, I tell you what, Herman Melville, you know, is so long-winded. It takes him forever to get to the point, right? But if you look at the original Moby Dick movie with Gregory Peck, right? The first chapter is introduced by Ishmael, and his first famous line is "Call me Ishmael," right? And it's significant that he took Ishmael, who was a fleshly man, right, as opposed to Isaac, right? It was all polar opposites: Ishmael and Isaac, Esau and Jacob. What are some other examples here? I can't think of it right now. Um, okay. Now, in Moby Dick, he says, he said something like, hey, there's a little bubbling brook, right? He said, hey, follow, when I feel like, I have some moxie, I feel like knocking hats off of people, right? I go for whatever, wander through the forest, right? I'll run across a stream, I'll follow the stream down, and eventually, inevitably, it'll lead you back to the sea, right? And there's a town there. What it represents: the sea, the mass of humanity. It'll lead you back to the sea, where every man, as if in a mirror, finds his own self. Okay, so that's he's using spiritual meaning there, but of course not in the good sense. Um, but yeah, you find yourself in the masses of humanity. All right. Uh, if you're focused on that, well, you're just focused on yourself. All right, so putting men before God is totally weak and self-serving. Trust, fear, seeking approval, status, seeking acceptance, right? And this is the way people are, right? They watch their words, not because they want to be something they're worried about themselves and their appearance, right? They're worried about political correctness or some garbage, right? So seeking glory from men. This is from the John 5:41. I do not receive glory from men, but I know you that you do not have love of God in yourselves. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, you will receive him. So, okay, you know what I'm saying? This is like, his own, um, self, and you will receive him. How can you believe when you receive glory from one another and do not seek the glory that is from the one and only God? Right? So they're looking to glorify themselves amongst each other, right? Amongst the mass of men, amongst that sea of humanity, which is a mirror, where every man, as if in a mirror, finds his own self. Yet no one was speaking openly of him for fear of the Jews. So the Jews were afraid of the Jews, right? They're afraid of social repercussions, right? And this is so lame, but this is so common to humanity. People will not be honest, right? Because if they fear social repercussions. Few people have backbone. I swear they don't. They'll just cave into social pressure. Nevertheless, many even of the rulers believed in him. But because of the Pharisees, they were not confessing him for fear that they would be put out of the synagogue, for they loved the approval of men rather than the approval of God. I mean, this is so damning, right? So they believed in Jesus Christ, but they won't confess him, right? They go, oh man, there's something to this guy, but keep it quiet, right? Don't say anything, because what do they fear more? Do they fear God? Do they seek God's approval? No, they seek the approval of men who are pathetic, men who are lame and uh, immoral and lying and self-serving. Why would you want to seek the approval of men? But that's what people do, right? Men are pathetic. Uh, Men are lame. Humanity by nature is lame. All right, Matthew 6. When you pray, do not pray like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogue and on the street corner so that they may be seen by men. All right? This is not about true worship of God. This is all about, creating an impression, controlling the impression management. It's, controlling how you appear before men. Is this about, pleasing men? In a sense, yes, but ultimately it's about pleasing self. Get people to think, highly of you. Why? For ego, pride, vanity, right? I mean, this is common. This is the way people are wired, right? You have to throw off these shackles. I don't care what these people think. Why? Because why are you going to make men your God? Men are lame, right? Matthew 23. Then Jesus spoke to the crowd and to the disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees have seated themselves in a chair of Moses. Okay, so they want to be big shots. Therefore, all they tell you to do and observe, all they tell you to do and observe, all they tell you, do and observe, but do not do according to their deeds, for they say things and do not do them. Saying, okay, they say do this, well, that's in line with Scripture, right? Okay, do that, right? But don't copy them because, right? I'm not one to talk because I'm not a good example of being a Christian. But, so it's like, hey, kids, don't do what I do. But, all right. But they tie up heavenly burdens and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves are unwilling to move them with so much as a finger. All right. So what he's saying is these guys were the lawyers, the keepers of the law, and they were making up all these ordinances, right? That laid burdens on the backs of them, right? For whose benefit? Really, for their benefit, right? And yet they don't lift a finger themselves, but they do all their deeds to be noticed by men. For they broaden their phylacteries and lengthen their tassels, their garments, to make themselves look like big shots and holy, right? They love the place of honor at banquets and in chief seats in the synagogues and respectful greetings in the marketplaces. What's this about? This is about all, mutually reinforcing, ego, pride, stroking each other's egos, building each other up, right? And being called rabbi by men. Oh, I'm the big shot. Yeah, I'm something, right? But do not be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, and you are all brothers. He's saying God is your teacher here, and you are brothers. The Holy Spirit is the one who's supposed to teach you, right? Teach you all things and lead and bring all things into remembrance. Do not call anyone on earth your father, for one is your father, he who is in heaven. Do not be called leader, for one is your leader, that is Christ. But the greatest among you shall be your servant. Whoever exalts himself shall be humbled, and whoever humbles himself shall be exalted. And that's part of God's hate for the prideful, right? The ego heads, the guys that are all full of themselves, right? God despises these people. Why? Because they're all about themselves, their petty little selves. Luke 16. Now the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, were listening. So these guys just love money, right? That was their main thing, right? Money, money, money. We're listening to all these things and we're scoffing him, Jesus, right? They're making fun of him. And he said to them, you are those who justify yourselves in the sight of men, right? But God knows your hearts. For that which is highly esteemed among men is detestable in the sight of God. God, what men holds up as like, oh man, that's so good and noble. Well, God hates all that worldly crap, right? It's all just full of self. Galatians 1:10. Am I now seeking the favor of men or of God? This is Paul, right? He's saying, hey, listen, am I a man pleaser? No, right? Or am I striving to please men? If I were still trying to please men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ. All right? So who's your God? Right? Men or God? All right? When you make men your God, you're really making yourself your God, because you're just looking for positive, recognition or acclaim from men, that's only, you're only trying to stroke your ego, right? You're really just worshiping yourself. And that's just weak and pathetic. All right, in one sense, the Pharisees were putting men before God, but ultimately they were putting their self before God because wanting reputation and recognition from men, I should say, is all about ego and feeding the self. All right, yeah, that's. I mean, that's it's not easy to. That's the way we're born. We're all about self, and from birth because that's the way we're not wired. We're given free will. We're given a self, and that self seeks to please itself, seeks to think highly of itself. All right, and above all things, right? Above all, truth and fact and logic and reason, right? And above God. Uh, so now we are commanded to overcome the world. So we talked about the world, what the world is. We talked about who rules the world, right? We talked about how the world, is going to try to make you stumble. We talked about how the world is going to hate Jesus Christ and true believers, all right? Anyone who's against, the interest of the worldly interests. And we talked about how, the world is the mass of humanity and man, right? That's the sea of mass, which is like a mirror where everyone, as if in a mirror, finds their own self, you know? Um, okay, so John 16:33, it says, Jesus says, these things are spoken to you so that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take courage. I have overcome the world. And this is what he's done. And he's saying this is what the goal is. You have to overcome the world. He led by example. John 5:4. For whatever is born of God overcomes the world. And this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith. Right? So overcoming the world is the victory. It's the goal. It's the accomplishment. Right? John, 1 John 4:4. You are from God, little children, and have overcome them, because greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. You have to overcome the world. All right. 1 John 5:5. Who is the one who overcomes the world? But he who believes in Jesus is the Son of, that Jesus is the Son of God. All right. Revelations 2. It says somewhere that you have to be born of God. What does it say? For who is overcome? Oh, wait a minute. I thought it said, who overcomes the world is born of God. Let's see. For whatever is born of God overcomes the world. Okay, that's John 5. 5:4. For whatever is born of God overcomes the world. I thought did I just read that? Oh yeah, it's right here. Okay. Huh. To him who overcome. Okay, so these are the prizes for overcoming the world. You know what? I'm not going to read those verses, and this is in red letter because it's attributed to Jesus Christ. Although John wrote this, John was the only one who survived to live. All the other disciples were martyred, just like Jesus Christ. All right. So these are the rewards for overcoming, right? The right to eat from the tree of life. Okay, that's a church said to the church of Ephesus, and then to the church of Smyrna. Not you won't be hurt by the second death. Then you'll be given hidden manna and a white stone with a new name written on it. Okay, where are we at here? Right, so uh, again, when it says new name, it's not like like a tombstone. Joe Smith is no, it's a new spirit written on it, a new essence of who you are. Uh, Authority over all nations to rule them with a rod of iron and the morning star. Okay, this is something that's promised in Isaiah 11. Yeah, let's take a look at that real quick. Isaiah 11 is very good. It says that somewhere else, elsewhere. Let's take a look at Isaiah 11. Isaiah 11. All right, I want to go to New American Standard. All right. Where is it? What am I looking at here? Oh. Oh, right out of his mouth. That's what I'm talking about here. I like this verse, this passage here. Um, so I'm gonna. Oh goodness sakes! Look at all this. All right, I love this passage. So let's read it. Then a shoot, that's a branch, right? Will spring from the stem of Jesse. All right, this Jesse was the father of David along that line, right? From the tribe of Judah, right? Going all the way back, to Abraham. And a branch will, from his roots, will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and strength, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. And he will delight in the fear of the Lord, and he will not judge by what his eyes see, nor make a decision by what his ears hear. But with righteousness he will judge the poor, and decide with fairness for the afflicted of the earth. Then he will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. I love this, right? You know, this is a person who is righteous, who is doing things not for self-interest. What do people do? And how do people believe things? To please themselves, right? To serve themselves, right? This is a guy who's seeking what? Fairness, right? Is that what people do? They'll say, "Yeah, I'm fair, I'm honest." Hell no, right? People, right, will twist themselves to believe that, right? But it's all about number one, serving the self, serving what you want to believe, right? To make yourself feel good, all right? Here is a righteous man, right? That's talked about, okay. Another reward is to wear a white garment. So yeah, that's the rod of his mouth. That's the rod I'm talking about here. Rule them with a rod of iron. All right. Wear a white garment and name written into the book of life. Jesus will confess his or her name. Let's read this. He who overcomes will thus be clothed in white garments and will not erase his name from the book of life. And I'll confess his name before my Father and for his angels. All right. Become a pillar in the temple of God and have the name of God written upon him. Again, what is the name? Oh, it's Jehovah. No, it's his Spirit, right? He's endowing him with his Spirit. This is the Holy Spirit. Okay, given the right to sit on the throne with God. I mean, this is the ultimate one. To the church of Laodicea, right? Given the right to sit in ultimate, I mean, this is why I should take it serious, right? Because, I'm not overcoming the world, right? I'm letting the world, drag me down. All right. But for those who overcome, and how do you overcome? To be born of God, right? That is how you overcome, to be born of God. All right. When you're born of God, boy, you just rise above. And a big part of this overcoming is a process of looking up to God, through all the trials, all what the world puts you through. In my case, it's a lot, right? It's even physical torture with toxic substances, right? Toxic bioagents, right? And that's just the start of things. But also just the masses around you just harassing you, all right? Oh, goodness, what's going on here? A summary chart. I can have to put this, insert page there, okay? All right. So these are the prizes. Let's go through them again. All right. Right to eat from the tree of life, not hurt by the second death, given the hidden manna, bread. What is the bread? Right? And the white stone, authority over all nations, and to rule them with a rod of iron. And that reminds me of Isaiah 11, right? I love this because I like this guy. This dude is, a righteous dude here, all right? And it's talking about Jesus Christ from the stem of Jesse, right? So he really is talking about Jesus Christ. Okay. Wear a white garment and written name into the book of life, right? Become a pillar in a temple with the name of God written upon you, all right? Have the right to sit on the throne with God. Wow. Okay. So the prize is not for doing works, all right? The prize is for overcoming the world, right? Works are what we are supposed. You're not going to gain your own salvation from the few piddly little works you do, right? That's for one. That's just trying to save yourself, which is pathetic. It's just another self-serving thing, which reinforces the problem. Two, the fundamental problem is itself. It's just reinforcing that. Two, you can't do enough works to make up for all the garbage you've done throughout your whole life, right? All the sins you committed, all the little nasty things, right? Right? You're gonna do a handful of works, right? And three, you think you're gonna buy God with your works? Salvation is coming back to God. You're gonna buy God with your few piddly works, right? I mean, come on. So that you don't gain the prize from works, right? God is the prize, right? And you can't buy that. It's too bad. It can only be gifted to you. Salvation, right, can only be given as a gift. That's why it's called grace. And the word is charisma, right, which means a freely given gift, that is totally unmerited. You don't deserve this. And God gives it to you. And he gives it to you paying for it with the life of his own son, right? Okay, so before we examine this, let us first examine the way back to God. Okay, well, that's coming up. Let's do a summary chart here. So the goal of the devil is to separate you from God, and his two greatest resources are one, the self, and two, the world, right? Which is ruled by the devil, who is the liar and the father of all lies. So the self, which is the natural flesh, craves pleasure from the world. It craves, how should I say it? It craves ego and pleasure from the world. Ego, ego aggregation, building up the ego, right? And pleasure from the world. The world is ruled by the devil, who's a liar, right? And the elements of the world are ego, pride, vanity, fame. Remember the word, the name of the Greek god of hell, Hades, right? Is where you get hedonism. Hedonism is all about pleasing self, right? Self-willed, right? Promoting self, right? It's all about self, wrapped up in self, right? The devil is the same. The Christian devil is the same, right? He is the god of selves, right? It's like it reminds me almost of in the book of Job, right? Talking about Leviathan, right? And this reminds me of Moby Dick, and no doubt Herman Melville had this imagery in mind, this metaphor in mind. Moby Dick, right? It says, who is the Leviathan, right? But the king of all the children of pride. It's like the mass agglomerate of all the ego heads, right? Another element is power, position, prestige. The word prestige is interesting. If you look up the etymology of prestige, it comes from trick, illusion, like a magic trick, a deception, right? Prestige is a fake, right? It's something made up. It almost reminds me of Shakespeare, right? Who was it? Was it Cassius said this? Reputation, reputation. I lost my reputation. I lost the eternal aspect of myself. Like, if that's the eternal aspect of yourself, come on, right? It is not, right? Reputation is fleeting, right? It's fickle, right? It's baseless. It can be bogus and wrong. And it's all about self. Okay, material wealth, luxury, power, money, conspicuous consumption, wicked devices, or wicked devious devices. So this gets to the more nasty things, which people do, right? Now, maybe not the average person so much, but clever people know wicked devices. And I'm thoroughly, schooled in these. I thoroughly understand these, where the masses will never see these. They'll just like straight over the heads. Wicked devious devices, lies, frauds, dirty games, schemes, manipulations, right? On a large scale, on a national scale, on international scales. Filthy appetites. All right, so the world, one, is going to cause you to stumble, right? And that'll cause you to be lost, which means destroyed in the word apolumi. The world stands in direct opposition to the interests of God, right? And that's why, Jesus said to Peter, "Get thee behind me, Satan." I'm going to put that in there. Get thee right behind me, Satan. For you have not in mind the interests of God, but the interests of men. Right? The world hates Jesus and his followers. All right? God's reward is not for works, but for overcoming the world by being born again. And the last thing I'll leave you with is, the Last Supper here. It's about Jesus washing the feet, and the purpose was not, oftentimes I guess pastors will say, "Oh, this is about being a servant to others." Well, in part it is, but it's more fun. It's more profound than that. It's not just about being a servant, right? Being humble. It's more, that's part of it, but it's being more than that, right? It's about the filth of this world. All right, it's about overcoming the world. So to understand this, you have to first review the definition of corruption, which is thartos in Greek, right? And it means anything subject to aging, breakdown, decay, and death, and it can refer to physical, moral, or spiritual corruption. All right, any aspect of it. Now, holy or holiness is the opposite of the dirt. Holiness or hagios is separated from the world and from selfishness by fully forming fellowship with God. Right. Which is a mouthful there. All that, all right. So holiness is separating yourself from world, overcoming the world, and from selfishness, Well, they go hand in hand because the reason why you love the world is selfishness by fully forming fellowship with God. So the only way to do that, is to be born of God. Remember? Okay. Only way to attain that holiness, right? Only way to overcome the world. So, okay, John 13:5, the Last Supper. Then he, Jesus, poured water into the basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel with which he was girded. So he came to Simon Peter and said to him, Lord, do you wash my feet? Peter's like, what? Right? Jesus answered and said to him, what I do, you do not realize now, but you will understand hereafter. Peter said to him, never shall you wash my feet. Like, no, come on, you're my Lord, man. I'm below you. You should never. Jesus said to him, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. So the only way you can have part with Jesus is if you're cleansed by him, right? That cleansing is through his sacrifice, where you're made justified, right? The word for justified is one of the daikaiosune, right? Which is righteous, right? There's just like 4 words for it. Daikaios, daikaiosune, daikaiu, right? And there's another word. But they all mean, there's subtle differences in meaning of righteous, right? Daikaio is another one, right? So there's 4 words for righteous, but they all, kind of mean the same thing, right? But it's also rendered as justified. So what it means is no man is righteous, but we are justified, right? We're not right. The only time you're really righteous is if you're walking fully in the Spirit, right? And the Spirit is leading you. Then you're righteous, right? Other than that, no man by himself is righteous, okay? We all have human motives and, self-serving stuff, which corrupts us. So this means, wash means to be justified, right? To have his redemption, his propitiatory payment applied to us so that we are redeemed and have atonement with God. Okay, Simon Peter said to him, oh, if that's the case, Lord, then wash not only my feet, but also my hands and my head. Jesus said to him, he who has bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not all of you, referring to Judas Iscariot, who would betray him. All right, so the idea is, the concept is the dirt, right? The corruption of this world, washing that, overcoming this world. So that's the real deeper meaning of this, overcoming the world and the filth of the world. Remember I told you all those passages which refer to dirt, right? And how it refers to the corruption, whether, it was usually moral corruption. For example, Jesus wrote in the dirt when the Pharisees are trying to corrupt the law, right? Use God's law to set a wicked, evil trap, right? How bad is that? Use God's holy law to do something evil. You're the keepers of the law, right? My goodness. Okay. So how do you overcome the world? By being born of God. That's a bottom line here. All right. So the world's is meant to trip you up. All right. Okay. So that's it for this lesson. I'll close it out here.